Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NTD Tonight. I'm David Zhang. Here are some of today's top stories. Former President Trump's defense team says they rest their case in the New York trial. We'll have the latest from today's court hearing. Severe turbulence on a Singapore Airlines flight left one person dead and at least 71 more injured. The plane made an emergency landing in Thailand. Firefighters are responding to a massive wildfire that ignited at Tonto National Forest. We'll have the latest on the blaze. First up, former President Trump said his defense team has already won the case by any standard in the New York versus Trump trial as he called on presiding judge Juan Merchan to dismiss the case.
We have a phenomenal case. We've won the case by any standard. Any other judge who would have thrown this case out. Any other judge would have thrown this case out. And I think that Juan Merchan would do himself and do the state and the city a great service by doing what everybody knows should be done.
Trump's team rested its case, saying they aren't going to call any more witnesses. So far, the defense has only called 2 witnesses, while the prosecution has called 20 witnesses over a span of 19 days, totaling over 50 hours of testimony. The last witness to testify was Robert Castillo, who served as an advisor to the prosecution's star witness, Michael Cohen. Prosecutors had a brief cross-examination of Castillo this morning. Trump didn't take the witness stand and has pleaded not guilty to all 34 felony counts.
Every single person is saying there's no crime. There's no crime. It's a kangaroo court. There's never been anything like this that I've ever seen. Now I have 2 other trials that were kangaroo courts also. It's stacked up. And hopefully appellate division will take care of those things. Because
Many Trump allies showed up in court today to support Trump, including his oldest son, Donald Trump Jr., Senator Eric Schmidt, and 6 GOP House members. Both sides will present closing arguments next week. The judge ordered the jury to return for summations next Tuesday. They will be adjourned until then. Deadly and severe turbulence on a Singapore Airlines flight left 1 person dead and at least 71 more injured. The flight took off from London en route to Singapore. It had to make an emergency landing in Bangkok, Thailand. About 210 passengers and 18 crew members were on board. Eyewitnesses footage showed damaged overhead cabins and injured passengers being carried out by stretchers after the flight landed. Videos posted on the Line messaging platform showed ambulances streaming toward the scene. 18 people are now hospitalized and another 12 were treated for their injuries. Among the injured are citizens from Malaysia, the United Kingdom, New Zealand, Spain, the United States, and Ireland. Tracking data captured by Flight Radar 24 shows the plane hit in the turbulence over Myanmar at approximately 7:49 a.m. UTC. The Boeing 777 aircraft sent a squawk code at that time, the international emergency signal.
We need to make sure there hasn't been significant fatigue to the structure. It's possible the aircraft will be a total loss.
A passenger said a dramatic drop led to those not wearing seatbelts hitting the ceiling. The 1 person who died was a 73-year-old British man. Both Singapore Airlines and Boeing offered their condolences to the family of the deceased passenger. Many countries are reacting to the International Criminal Court, or ICC's decision to seek arrest warrants for Israeli leaders. Unlike the US, the European Union has chosen not to condemn the court, but the UK is taking a different stance.
On ICC, I can only say that there is established EU position on the ICC in the Council conclusions from June last year, where the member states have said very much that the European Union supports the ICC for its central role in bringing justice to victims in all situations under its jurisdiction.
Well, this is a deeply unhelpful development. Of course, it's still subject to a final decision, but it remains deeply unhelpful nonetheless. There is no moral equivalence between a democratic state exercising its lawful right to self-defense and the terrorist group Hamas.
Earlier today, Israel urged the nations of the civilized world to oppose the ICC's arrest warrants. The government asked the nations that despise terrorists to stand by Israel. The European Union said it's following the developments and it treats the ICC as an important and independent international institution. The European Affairs Ministers for Ireland, which is part of the EU, says the ICC should be allowed to do its work. The Foreign Minister of Sweden took a similar stance, saying his country defers to the ICC's decisions and upholds the multinational system. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said today that the United States and Europe must respond jointly to China's industrial overcapacity. In remarks on the importance of the U.S.-European alliance in Frankfurt, Yellen said China's excessive industrial capacity and flooding of inexpensive goods threatened both American and European firms, as well as the industrial development of emerging market countries.
China's industrial policy may seem remote as we sit here in this room, but if we do not respond strategically and in a united way, the viability of businesses in both our countries and around the world could be at risk.
Her comments come a week after the Biden administration announced the steep new tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, semiconductors, steel, and other strategic industries. She warned Chinese officials in April that the U.S. will not accept the excess production of these goods in order not to flood global markets with cheap exports. Hundreds of firefighters in Arizona are battling a massive wildfire in Tonto National Forest, which has now burned over 14,000 acres. NTD's Christina Corona provides us with the latest details.
Officials reported that the Wildcat fire was first discovered Saturday morning near Vista Verde, west of Bartlett Lake in the Cave Creek Ranger District. The fire expanded to 14,283 acres and is only 23% contained as of Tuesday morning. While the exact cause of the fire is unknown, officials have classified it as human-caused. The Geronimo and Prescott hotshot crews, air tankers, and a helicopter have been deployed to combat the fire, with Scottsdale Fire also assisting in the containment efforts. Crews from outside Arizona, including one from Montana, have joined the fight against the Wildcat fire. A section of Tonto National Forest was closed when the fire initially began, and visitors were evacuated from Bartlett Lake as the fire spread. The Maricopa County Sheriff's Office also closed Bartlett Dam Road due to the fire burning on both sides. People are advised to avoid the area while firefighting efforts continue. The closed portion of Tonto National Forest will remain off-limits through at least June 19th, unless the order is lifted earlier. Christina Corona, NTD News.
The Department of Justice announced multiple arrests after North Korea dispatched thousands of IT workers around the world. They used the stolen or borrowed U.S. persons' identities to pose as domestic workers. It is the largest case the Justice Department charged involving this type of IT worker scheme.
The Justice Department announced Thursday multiple arrests in a series of complex stolen identity theft cases. Officials say they are part of a wide-ranging scheme that generates enormous proceeds for the North Korean government, including for its weapons program. The charges include prosecutions of an Arizona woman, Ukrainian man, and 3 unidentified foreign nationals. Prosecutors say the conspiracy involves thousands of North Korean information technology workers who are dispatched by the government to live abroad. They stole more than 60 Americans' identities to obtain remote employment at U.S.-based Fortune 500 companies. In a statement released, an assistant attorney general said these crimes benefited the North Korean government, giving it a revenue stream and, in some cases, proprietary information stolen by the co-conspirators. According to the court documents, the scheme defrauded over 300 U.S. companies using U.S. payment platforms and online job site accounts and proxy computers located in the U.S. The fraud scheme is a way for heavily sanctioned North Korea to take advantage of a high-tech labor shortage in the U.S. and remote telework. The Justice Department says the cases are part of a broader strategy to not only prosecute individuals who enable the fraud, but also to build partnerships with other countries. It also warns private sector companies to be vigilant about the actual identities of the people they're hiring.
We'll take a short break now, everybody, but here's a look at what we have for you when we come back. New paw prints grace Hollywood as a comic strip cat steps onto the big screen. Traditional Indonesian dance, fashion, and food. The Indonesian Bazaar in San Francisco celebrates Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month and the 75th anniversary of US-Indonesian relations. A college football quarterback files a lawsuit against a head coach over a failed $13.8 million NIL deal. We'll break down the case. Those stories and more coming up on NTD Tonight. Welcome back to NTD Tonight. I'm your host, David Zhang. A cause of death has been confirmed for a teenager who died after participating in Paki's one-chip challenge. NTD's Christina Corona provides the latest update from his autopsy report.
On September 1st, 14-year-old Harris Walabaugh was found unresponsive by police after consuming a corn chip coated with Carolina Reaper pepper and Naga Viper pepper as part of a social media one-chip challenge. Walabaugh passed away at a hospital later that same day. The one-chip challenge was an internet trend where participants ate a single extremely spicy Paki chip without eating or drinking anything afterward. According to the Massachusetts Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, Walabaugh's exact cause of death was deemed a cardiopulmonary arrest in the setting of recent ingestion of food substance with high capsaicin concentration, which resulted in a heart attack triggered by consuming the high level of chili pepper extract. The Chief Medical Examiner determined that Harris had an enlarged heart and a congenital heart defect. Officials say Harris may have had one or perhaps two types of underlying heart problems.
One is an enlarged heart, which might be a dilated heart that's not functioning well, or it might be a thickened heart, which is called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is actually a cause of sudden death in young athletes.
Harris was said to have what's referred to as a myocardial bridge.
And that refers to when one of the main arteries of the heart, some segment of it tunnels into the heart muscle. And so with high activity, it can be squeezed and blood flow to part of the heart muscle can be diminished, setting up the possibility of a severe rhythm problem.
After Harris's death, Paki said on their X, "While the Paki one-chip challenge is intended for adults only, we have seen an increase in teen usage of this product. We care about all of our consumers and have made the decision to remove the product from shelves. Paki is actively working with retailers and are offering refunds for any purchases of their single-serve one-chip challenge product." Christina Corona, NTD News.
Garfield the cat made his mark at the TCL Chinese Theater in Hollywood, leaving his new paw prints among the stars. NTD's Christina Corona has more from the ceremony.
Garfield, the lazy lasagna-loving cat, set his orange paws in cement at the TCL Chinese Theater on May 19th. The sarcastic feline was accompanied by his creator, Jim Davis, who also signed the cement as part of promoting the upcoming Sony Pictures animation, The Garfield Movie.
For 45 years, I've been drawing Garfield in 3 frames, 25 words or less, and to be able to see him on a big screen in a format like this gives us an opportunity to see sides of Garfield and situations that we can address that I didn't have the time or the space to do, in all those years of doing the strip. So this is awesome.
After the ceremony, Davis mentioned that when he first created Garfield, he simply hoped to earn enough to sustain his cartoon career.
When I created Garfield, I was hoping to just be able to make enough money so I didn't have to take a second job to support my cartooning habit. So maybe sometime down the road have a book or something like that. But to think that he became a real, entertainment figure and that he resonated, with the readers like this is just mind-blowing. It's great to see.
In the movie, Garfield and his sidekick Odie are taken out of their comfort zones when they are kidnapped by the villainess, Jinx. Chris Pratt, who voices Garfield, didn't need to alter his voice for Garfield, as director Mark Dindal, with the approval of creator Jim Davis, wanted him to use his natural voice.
You know, it's a version of Garfield that really people haven't probably seen in the comic strips, because he's sent his pampered indoor cats sent on this wild outdoor adventure in this epic heist movie. This hilarious hijinks ensue, and so you've never really seen him in an action environment. And so then it was just basically using my own voice and trying to be honest and be real and trust that Mark, what he believed was that he wanted it to sound just like me. So I said, okay, you hired the right guy. I know how to do Chris Pratt.
Pratt also found the ceremony meaningful, as he lived near the TCL Chinese Theater early in his career.
And I used to always wonder if I would ever have a premiere here. If it was like early on in my acting days, and I would walk around and look at the stars, and I would wonder what the story was, and if ever there would be a chance that I could have something like that happen. And here I am. I'm at a premiere, and I have one of those stars, and I was just part of the ceremony, putting paw prints down. It's really surreal. So it's super cool.
The Garfield movie will be released in the U.S. on May 24th. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Indonesia is sometimes referred to as Spice Island. Its food is often colorful with many layers of flavor. NTD caught up with an Indonesian bazaar in California celebrating AAPI Heritage Month, as well as the 75th anniversary of US-Indonesian relations. NTD's Jason Blair reports.
The bazaar featured traditional Indonesian dance, fashion, and food.
Food is very diverse. So to me, that's the uniqueness.
Indonesian food is often packed with a variety of flavors with layers of herbs and spices. Pure Cane Juice Company served up a popular drink commonly found in Indonesia.
We're offering sugar cane, pressing it here on site.
They take raw sugar cane sticks and crush them into juice.
And then we mix it with fresh strawberry and lemon, or a mojito with mint and lime, dragon fruit.
Gamelan Skarjaya is a traditional music and dance company formed in 1979. It seeks to foster artistic exchange between Bali and the U.S. The band conductor said one difference between traditional Indonesian music and Western music is that it's not written down.
But in Bali, especially in Bali, we don't do that. We learn by oral and then play by ourselves without reading the notation.
Indonesian is a very pluralistic, multi-ethnic society. We have 700 languages in the country, although we are united by one language. But everything is rooted from these cultures.
Indonesia is made up of 17,000 islands and is the fourth largest country in the world. According to Worldmeter, it has a population of about 280 million people. The United States and Indonesia established formal diplomatic relations 75 years ago in 1949. Jason Blair, NTD News.
Shifting over to sports, Georgia quarterback Jaden Rashada has filed a lawsuit against Florida's head coach over a failed $13.8 million NIL deal. NTD's Carlos Reyes has more on the story.
Georgia quarterback Jaden Rashada has filed a federal suit against Florida coach Billy Napier, top Gators booster Hugh Hatchcock, and former football staffer Marcus Castro-Walker. The suit, filed Tuesday, centers on a failed $13.85 million name, image, and likeness deal that Rashada claims was a fraudulent scheme to lure him to Florida. Rashada, once a prized high school recruit, alleges that Napier, Hatchcock, and Castro-Walker promised him a lucrative NIL deal with no intention of following through. This case marks the first time an active SEC quarterback has sued a sitting rival head coach. Filed in the Pensacola Division of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Florida, the lawsuit accuses the defendants of fraudulent misrepresentation, inducement, aiding and abetting fraud, civil conspiracy, negligent misrepresentation, and tortious interference. According to the complaint, the trio assured Rashada that if he ditched a $9.5 million deal with Miami, he would receive a more substantial deal at Florida. The suit claims Hatchcock and his company Velocity Automotive, along with the Gator Guard NIL Collective, promised $13.85 million to Rashada. However, after Rashada committed to Florida, the payments never materialized. Allegedly, a $500,000 signing bonus was due on December 5th, but was never paid. Instead, the Gator Collective reportedly terminated the deal a day later, leaving Rashada without the promised compensation. Rashada's attorney, Rusty Hardin, known for representing high-profile athletes, argues that the defendants exploited the young quarterback with false promises. The lawsuit seeks punitive damages, emphasizing the unequal bargaining power and the emotional toll on Rashada. Napier and Castro Walker reportedly continued to assure Rashada of the deal even after its termination, insisting that Hatchcock would personally guarantee the funds. Despite these assurances, the payments never came through, and Rashada ultimately asked for a release from his letter of intent with Florida. He then transferred to Arizona State before moving to Georgia. The NCAA was investigating the case, but following a recent legal ruling limiting its enforcement of NIL-related compensation rules, the investigation has waned. Carlos Reyes, NTD News.
Stay tuned for China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer coming up next. An urgent alert, a top U.S. agency warning all water facilities to immediately bolster their cybersecurity. More on how recent moves from China, Russia, and Iran are involved. More on China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And that's all we've got for you tonight. We'd like you to join us again on NTD Tonight every weekday at 9 p.m. I'm David Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.